On the stage that is the African continent, South Africa and Nigeria are by far the leading players. Business and economic relations between these two giants have improved steadily since the launch of a binational commission in 1999. According to South African President Zuma, over 100 South African companies were already doing business in Nigeria. In 2012 alone, close to 75,000 Nigerian tourists visited South Africa. Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan's recent state visit to the country, followed by the two-day South Africa-Nigerian Business Forum, was deemed an ideal platform to further strengthen relations. According to South African Minister of Trade and Industry, Rob Davies, the relationship with Nigeria has gone from strength to strength.
We have seen a growth in the trade that has taken place between our two countries. In our currency, the trade last year was about 36 billion rand. The year before that, it was about 27 billion. So there's a sizable increase in that trade. But it is dominated by the purchase by South Africa of petroleum products from Nigeria. We have also seen an investment relationship, particularly on the South African side, in South African investors into Nigeria. We have about 36 billion, the same figure more or less, of investments into Nigeria, which have created about 5,000 odd jobs in a diversity of sectors, mostly in sectors such as television stations, telecommunications companies, but also some other companies in other productive sectors of the Nigerian economy.
For these two great countries to be able to do business without limits, there must be a synergy of hearts and minds. People must understand their business partners, they must understand the environment in which they want to do business. There must be a reacculturization. There must be, our hearts must virtually beat as one. There must be an affinity between our peoples. And then we create the environment. And that is where culture is a major platform, because that is the first letter of recommendation. There must be a good feeling between the peoples of South Africa and Nigeria.
But is the devil in the detail? From a private sector perspective, delegates at the Business Forum felt that more needed to be done to enhance trade between the two countries.
If you look at the history of most of the African countries, democracy took time before we got to where we are. So a lot of the government, because of the legitimate issue, they probably did not relax rules that would allow people to move freely. But now this is a new dawn in the continent. And if you look at the size of the continent, the two biggest economy in the continent is Nigeria and South Africa. And they have to drive that process to ensure that the century for the continent is realized.
A reoccurring thorn in the side of connecting South Africa and Nigeria has been the issue of visas, a definite impediment to doing business, according to many Nigerian business travelers.
The biggest issue that we have in Africa is is access. For example, somebody like me, for example, today I need 39 visas to go around Africa. Even areas where we say, yes, this is commercial, this is a common market. Yeah. If you are going to go by road, you'll be there for a couple of hours.
For all of your life, I can tell you that.
Yeah, the same thing, even with our own area, because, for example, today it might take me 2 days to take my goods from Lagos into Ghana, crossing two countries. And, Accra is nearer going to Accra from Lagos than going to Abuja. Okay, by road, it's almost like half.
Right.
This one is 450 kilometers, the other one is about 680 or 690. But it's easier for you to actually go to Abuja and come back by road,
right,
than to go to Accra. So we need to really look at it, yes, why is European Union working? Because, first of all, once you get into Belgium, for example, you can now just go by train 1 hour to France. You can go to anywhere, no checking of here and there.
Yeah.
You know, but we are saying that yes, we want to do business together, but the impediments in terms of going in to do business, there are quite a lot.
For a Nigerian going to the UK, you have, for instance, 10 years multiple visa entry.
Yeah.
Going to France, you have 5-year multiple visa entry. But coming to South Africa, you probably have only 2 or 3 years. So in some cases, they've given people with genuine business interests in South Africa 6 months. And if you look at the situation of Nigerian too, to be able to obtain Nigerian visa is extremely difficult. So for me, I do not see the reason why this government cannot understand that these people are brothers. We want to do business. We want to relate with ourselves. Create the laws that will allow us to move freely within ourselves. If a British coming to South Africa does not require a visa to come into South Africa, tell me any good reason why a Nigerian require a visa to come to South Africa. Or at the best still, let those visas be obtained at the port of entry.
Yeah.
When you can clarify the purpose of the visit, give the visa at the port of entry.
Yeah.
As a businessman and somebody who controls a financial institution, for instance, I do not have the luxury of having to leave my passport in an embassy for 10, 15 days for them to process, have to come back to their home government. I don't have that luxury because I move around.
Yeah.
So they need to move with the reality of the times. Our peoples we have crossed the barrier of segregation. Let them encourage us to come together.
The scrapping of visas altogether was also a discussion point.
The two countries need to work together to look at categories of visa, especially for tourism and as well as business, where, based on obviously controls that may be put in place and so on, you can facilitate longer term visas, as opposed to just having a blanket policy that stops everyone from traveling back and forth.
What is essentially a piece of paper has become a highly contentious issue. The forum stretched this even further, eventually resulting in an agreement allowing for waivers for visas for travelers with diplomatic passports.
I think what you find is that for the next 3-year visas, we'll now have 3-year visas between the two countries,
right?
Especially for business and men and investors. In addition to that, anyone with diplomatic passport between the two countries no longer need visas.
Yeah.
And then in Nigeria already, we have a policy where any businessman, any investor, any tourist coming to Nigeria, you can obtain your visa at the point of entry now.
It is already the regime in South Africa that for expedited visa system is in operation for recognized business people from Nigeria. You get a 3-year multiple entry visa. And I think that will now be extended on a reciprocal basis today, as well as the visas for people with diplomatic and official passports. So I think that we're beginning to address that matter, and I think it's very, very much part of the process of building people-to-people relations that Minister Duke spoke about.
Developing Africa's infrastructure was also on the forum's agenda. The topic of infrastructure development on the continent, in many examples the lack thereof, was also cited as an ongoing challenge.
I think that the key issue is infrastructure. And I think both governments realize this. The relationship between Nigeria and South Africa is an important relationship. Somebody once told me that, Africa will advance without the relationship being perfect with Nigeria and South Africa. But it would advance at a faster rate if that relationship was great. Now you ask yourself, will we get the 7% growth rates and 6% growth rates in Africa? Will they be sustained to take people out of poverty? I think we will get some good growth, but not at the rate we want unless we build our infrastructure. And governments have a major role to play in water, in roads and railways. You can't get the private sector to fund that by itself unless you give it the incentive. So I think infrastructure is key.
Right. So from where you stand, are there enough effort being put in to sort out those infrastructure bottlenecks? Because here in South Africa, with some of the probably best infrastructure that the continent has, you still have issues.
Yeah, I think you will have this. One of the things about infrastructure, Godfrey, is it's not just building the infrastructure, it's maintaining it. It's the issue of education, it's the issue of capacity, skills and training. Once the infrastructure is put down, that's the first part of the story. The next part is then to maintain that infrastructure, to price it adequately. The whole debate about tolling of roads, for example, without going into the politics of that, there are issues there. And so you have to understand that once you build the infrastructure, you have to maintain it. And that's an education issue as well.
less prominent challenges also featured in the meeting rooms.
Softer issues, which, for example, Aliko Dangote alluded to. If you are going from Nigeria, let's say, to Ghana, trying to ship your goods to Ghana, the problems you encounter on the road, things like at the borders, immigration, customs. So it is easier to trade with countries outside Africa than within Africa. So I think the sooner we start addressing those issues, transportation, other infrastructure, and also eliminating those constraints within the border, and also educating our people, because you see, it's good for the ministers to now say, okay, we have come up with a very good policy, but it hasn't been drilled down to the people who are really the operatives. You know, that, okay, Nigeria and South Africa have decided to pool resources and efforts together in order to achieve what they ought to achieve, i.e. the transformation of Africa. Because without these two economies, really Africa has no future, so to say. But but I always believe that unless Africa and South Africa, Nigeria and South Africa pool efforts together, and at the same time there is also good competition between them, then competition increases development.
Challenges aside, delegates agreed that in order for the relationship between the two nations to succeed, historical distrust and suspicion needed to be eradicated.
This is very overblown. Whether one country has 160 million people or so, the other country has about 50 million people. So all 210 million of them can't get on hunky-dory. But I can tell you two things. His Excellency, the President of Nigeria, His Excellency, the President of South Africa, have a very good relationship. And I think that both of them are dealing with very complex economies, societies in transitions in different ways. Take Nigeria in the first instance. We know that in Nigeria we have the complexity of many tribes, many alliances, many political factions. We know that this government is trying to reform, make some major reforms in the economy, taking out the petroleum and fuel subsidy, working on issues of financial regulation, for example, which has got opponents in it. And then we also know that here in South Africa, there's this issue where people have not transitioned, though they've transitioned to democracy, they've not transitioned to economic freedom. And there's this issue, this contestation of what is the right way for South Africa to go. Is it back to a kind of statist kind of way of working the economy, or back to going through more laissez-faire? And this will create tensions. So both presidents are presiding on very complex systems. And we should give them some amount of credit for that, while still saying that there are these things which we expect and which we hope that they're going to meet.
At the end of the two-day conference, no fewer than 9 memorandums of understanding were signed between the two countries. These included agreements to cooperate in the fields of mining, defense, oil and gas, power, and ICT. Given that both South Africa and Nigeria have such prominence both regionally and globally, a high level of cooperation is needed between the two nations to guarantee economic prosperity for both.